Hello, good morning, and I'm very much privileged to read ardently and fervently among heartfelt audiences. Chapter 1, The Name and Nature of Modernism. So, this is the sequel of the lecture series with the 5 pages chapter dissertation. Chapter 1, The Name and Nature of Modernism, Malcolm Bradbury and James McFarlane. Unlike dates and periods, are not facts, they are retrospective conceptions that we form about past events, useful to focus discussions, but very often leading historical thought astray. G.M. Trevelyan. Cultural seismology, the attempt to record the shifts and displacements of sensibilities that regularly occur in the history of art and literature and thought, habitually distinguishes three separate orders of magnitude. At the end of the scale are those tremors of fashion that seem to come and go in rhythm with the changing generations, the decade being the right unit for measuring the curves that run from the first shock to peak activity and on to the dying rumbles of derivative epigonentum. Here we have rumble the annotation of my personal footnotes, an agreement or a disagreement to continue slowly and steadily for a prolonging period to a second order of magnitude among those larger displacements whose effects go deeper and last longer, forming those extended periods of style and sensibilities which were usually which are usefully measured in centuries. This leaves a third category for those overwhelmingly dislocations, those cataclysmic upheavals of culture. Here, cataclysmic upheavals, the phrasal annotations define cataclysmic. We know that that's a sudden and violent change, such as a disaster or a war, calamity, and blight and pestilence. And we have upheaval, a sudden disastrous change and violent change that causes a lot of worry, fear, anxieties, and problems and confusion, etc. Those fundamental convulsions of the creative human spirit that seem to topple even the most solid and substantial of our beliefs and assumptions leave great areas of the past in ruins, and noble ruins we tell ourselves for reassurance, question an entire civilization or culture, and stimulate frenzied rebuilding, frenzied hysteria, the temperamental outburst with a lot of tremendous emotional activities and outrageous. We have here that the 20th century brought us a new earth is undeniable, and it is the purpose of this volume to explore some of its crucial manifestations. But we have also increasingly come to believe that this new earth comes from and is an upheaval of the third and cataclysmic order. This view is not surprising. One of the features of the age we are talking, the relativistic age, about is that it is remarkably historicist, depicting social and cultural influences and events, alluding from the perspectives of history, disposed to the apocalyptic and diabolical. And we have here the grueling and the gruesome, appallingly tremendous, crisis centered views of history. So familiar is the view that it needs not only that it needs only brief exemplification. Thus, therefore, so on and so forth. Herbert Reed, for instance, writing in 1933, puts the point succinctly. There have been revolutions in the history of Earth before today. There is a revolution with every new generation. And periodically, not sporadically, every century or so, we get a wider or deeper change of sensibility which is recognized as a period. The Trecento, the Quattrocento, the Baroque and the Rococo, and the Romantic and the Impressionist, and so on. But I do think we can already discern in the mean with here urging or persuading something in the kind of contemporary revolution. It is not so much a revolution which implies a turning over, even a turning back, but rather a break up, a devolution. And here the devolution, annotated vocabulary and glossary, is that endowment and the bestowal of bequesting power from the central government or authority to the local regionalized government or authority. Some would say a dissolution. Its characteristics is catastrophic. Contemplating the impact first of the Gauguin and Van Gogh, then of Picasso, Red claimed that we now are now concerned not with the logical development of the art of painting in Europe, not even with a development for which there is any historical parallel, but with an abrupt break with all tradition. The aim of 5 centuries of European effort is openly abandoned. The late C.S. Lewis constructed in his inaugural lecture at Cambridge in 1954 De Descriptione Temporum on a similar notion. In his view, the greatest of all divisions in the entire history of Western man, greater than that which divides antiquity from the Dark Ages, or the Dark Ages from the Middle Ages, and is that separating the present from the age of Jane Austen and Sir Walter Scott. In politics, religion, social values, art, and literature, a chasm lies between. I do not think that any previous age produced work which was in its own time as shatteringly and bewilderingly new as that of the Cubists and the Dadists and the Surrealists and the Picasso has been in ours, and I am quite sure this is true of poetry. I do not see how anyone can doubt that modern poetry is not only a great novelty than any other new poetry, but in a new way, almost in a new dimension. Lately, there have been attempts to locate the great divide and the frontiers. More precisely, even more precisely, the French critic Roland Barthes identifies it with the pluralization of world views, deriving from the evolution of new classes and communications, and puts it at mid-century. Around 1850, classical writing therefore disintegrated, and the whole of literature, from Flaubert to the present day, became the problematics of language. As a general article of belief before the fretful details or the frenzied details, and in here we mean the word fretful having um, stature that is derogatory, unhappy, and uncomfortable. Are reached and the character and causes analyzed, the ideas of a great divide between the past and present, earth before and earth now, has drawn much allegiance. But it is also a fact that about the nature of the modern situation and the consequences of the situation on the form and character of earth, there is less than unanimity. It is necessary to be absolutely modern, and that is il faut être absolument moderne. Rimbaud's exhortations has a particular appeal to our temper. And we have here the word Okay, so but it is subject to many interpretations, and the stylistic plurality of the 20th century urged a plurality so great that Andrew Mulrock speaks in less voice do silence, the voices of silence of the imaginary museum of stylistic heterodoxy that marks our age reminds us how variously it has been interpreted by writers and artists themselves, and of course by the critics and commentators. There is an abundance of accounts of the condition of modern art and a wealth of expansive explanation of its character and causes. Most of these views are apocalyptic, and one is that our art is not totally divorced from tradition and humanism, and that there is nothing spatially singular and novel about our art and situation at all. In the present state of artistic and critical opinion, a highly fluid state marked by sharp differences of view, starkly and strikingly, poignantly, then perhaps the most any account can offer is a personal or at last partial version of an overwhelmingly complex phenomenon, an individual selection from the infinity of detail which may in time compose down and with other views into the sifted and resolved thing, a critical concept. But if about the phenomenon there is much variety and conflict of opinion, that is also growing agreement about its name. Clearly, the word of criticism has settled for some variant or collocation of the word modern to identify the arts of its time, or if not all of them, then some part of them. Here, collocation, allusions to the word collocation, annotations, um, the combination of words, two or more words together used in a sentence that would occur more frequently and intentionally than that would happen by chance. As a linguistic term, and so the most modern movement, the modern tradition, the modern age, the modern century, the modern temper, the modernism, so or allusions to everything and to all appearances a Germanic neologism. Here the word neologism 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 stands a new word or expression or a new meaning of a new word. Neologism, though presumably by analogy with comparing with these labels like the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, simply the modern thought court. One's regret at the choice is not only that it predetermines the nature of our view of modern literature, it also comes from the inappropriateness of applying so semantically the phraseology and the rhetorics and the meaning of words and phrases, mobile and indeed febrile, cataclysmic upheavals, a term to a historical phenomenon as we now wish to root in time with this hysteria. Modernity in normal usage is something that progresses in company with and in the speed of the years, like the bow wave of a ship. Last year's modern is not this year's, apt as it is to the sensibility of the age to prefer such terms, to insist on the association with time and history. Matters have now reached the point where we wish to fix and stabilize the modern. When an extra historical dimension is admitted when following G.S. Fraser or the editors of the modern tradition, one claims as modern Catullus, but not Virgil, Villain but not Ronsard, Donne but not Spenser, Clough but not Tennyson, and when one does the same for one's own time, Conrad but not Galsworthy. The semantic instability of the term becomes obvious. Modernity is a crucial word for us, but it is tied up with the definitions of our situation, which are subject to change. The notion of the modern undergoes semantic shift much faster than similar terms of comparable function. like the romantic or the neoclassical. Indeed, as Lionel Trilling says, it can swing round in meaning until it is facing the in the opposition direction. We use the term historically to locate a distinct stylistic phase which is ceasing or has ceased, hence the current circulation of counterparts like the proto-modernism or the paleo-modernism, neo-modernism and the post-modernism. We also use it to sum up a permanent modernizing state of affairs and the state of mind and the view of man it engenders, and the type of consciousness frequent in the modern world, obsessed by a compulsion to keep up, reduced to despair by the steadily increasing speed of the total movement. Yet the word retains its force because of its association with a characteristic contemporary feeling. The historicist feeling that we live in totally novel times, that contemporary history is the source of our significance, that we are derivatives, not of the past, but of the surrounding and unfolding environment or scenario, that modernity is a new consciousness, a fresh condition to the human mind, a condition which modern art has explored, felt through, sometimes reacted against. The name then is clear, the nature of the movement or movements, the where, when, why, and what of it is much less so, and equally unclear it is of the stylistic claim that we are making. So this is very febrile issue, because we are having here nervousness and excitement and boisterousness and belligerence and exuberance. We have noted that a few ages have been more multiple, more promiscuous. Here the word promiscuous is annotated as a ranges of sources, taken from a ranges of sources without conscious thoughts. And to distill from the multiplicity and overall style of mannerism is a difficult, perhaps even an impossible task. We can describe 18th century literature in Western countries as neoclassical, 19th century literature in even more countries as romantic. Though the labels paper over and innumerable cracks, chasms, pitfalls, we can suggest a general drift in most of the significant artists we are dealing with in those periods. A.O. Lovejoy has pointed out that we use the term romanticism to mean not only to a wide variety of different things and aestheticism, but a wide variety of contradictory things. So we do, and the quest for definition is now raging again. But romanticism, arousing, has a recognizable general meaning and serves as a broad stylistic description of a word whole era. What though is so striking about the modern period is that there is no word we can use in quite the same way modernism has been used from time to time analogously to Romanticism to suggest the general temper of the 20th century urge. It has equally been appropriated by those who wish to distinguish and isolate one current at one particular time, a powerful movement, certainly Western cultures. It has been urged that modernism is our inevitable urge, as Gertrude Stein put it, the only composition appropriate to the new composition in which we live and the disposition of space and time. But it has also been seen as a form of late bourgeois, whereby the middle class and those who support and in favoritism of the capitalism and capitalist movement, bour- bourgeois, bourgeois, we have got here aestheticism, especially by the Marxist critics like Lukács, who sees the characteristics the truly self-realizing modern art as a species of realism. The term has been used to cover a wide variety of movements, subversive of the realist or the romantic impulse and disposed towards abstraction. Impressionist and post-impressionist and symbolism and futurism and imagism and then daidism and surrealism and vorticism. But even those are not, as we shall see, all movements of one kind, and some are radical reactions against others. In some nations, modernism has seemed central to the evolution of the literary and the artistic tradition. In others, it has seemed simply to visit and then go away again, sporadic visitations. Modernism has done indeed exist. Acknowledgement can no longer sensibly be withheld. The movements and experiments of modern writers have come right to the forefront of and crossing all the barriers and the frontiers of artistic attention. But on what scale, at what time, and with what character will be profoundly and strikingly explored and voyaged in the upcoming podcasts. And very soon, I'm going to share and have a discourse betwixt the gladdening audience and me as a narrator of the adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain with the critical um, commentaries and critical essays and chapter wise critical commentaries and summaries as well as the characters, plots and settings, motifs and themes, allegories and satires, irony and sarcasm, personifications. Um, so, in this context and note, I would like to take farewell. Have a blessed day.